Hello everyone, and welcome to our next version of the Data Science Institute Quick Explanations. My name is Jan-Willem, and I will quickly walk you through what you need to know about the Enterprise Big Data Framework. What is it and what can you do with it? Let's start with a little bit of history. The Enterprise Big Data Framework came to light in 2018, and it addresses a very simple question. What are the capabilities that organizations need in order to become much more data-driven? It's no surprise that almost every organization today understands that with data you can make decisions that are faster, better, and get you ahead of the competition. But many organizations struggle with implementing that on a day-to-day basis. So this raises a very fundamental question. What do you need in order to become much more data-driven? Now, in order to answer this question, I've been doing research for around 2.5 years, interviewing hundreds of people and dozens of organizations around the key capabilities necessary to become more data-driven. And I'm deliberately focusing always on capabilities. What are the things that organizations actually can do and what they can build in order to move this forward? The result of this is the publication that you see on the screen, the Enterprise Big Data Framework, which is called Building Critical Capabilities to Win in the Data Economy. The book was published in 2018 and is now widely adopted at Fortune 500 companies around the world. What makes the Enterprise Big Data Framework unique is that it's vendor independent. So it doesn't really matter which technology or which data centers or which algorithms you're using. It applies to every type of organization across different industries. And the second key differentiator is that it's a capability model. I've specifically tried to focus on selecting capabilities and researching capabilities that organizations can grow over time. Now that you have a little bit of the background, let's dive right away into the most central model. On this next slide, you can see an overview and schematic of what the Enterprise Big Data Framework is all about. In headlines, it consists of 6 core capabilities that can be subdivided into a lot of other micro capabilities, about which I will talk a little bit more next. But I'd like you to take a quick look at the central model. It consists of 6 different areas that are all equally important and that organizations can build upon in order to get more data-driven. At the center, you see big data strategy, because if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. In the big data strategy, organizations need to define how they will achieve a competitive advantage, and more importantly, how to establish a return on investment on the investments made in your data structures. Next to that, you will need to have technology, which is represented in the big data architecture capability. In this capability, you need to establish your data warehouses, which tools, which processing and compute power you're going to establish, and how you can deal with large sets of data in a cost-efficient manner that is timely and meet your business requirements. Thirdly, you will need to analyze that data. And getting value from massive data sets requires knowledge around specific algorithms, data mining practices, and ensuring that you are using the right algorithm to solve the right kind of business problem. And that means that you need some knowledge and capabilities within this area as well. Fourthly, at the bottom, you see big data processes. In any organization, large or small, you will need to establish processes to ensure that data is structured and managed appropriately. Here, think about data security, data privacy, data governance, or even data management processes. Every organization today needs to use data within the boundaries and confinements of what is required by law, but also what is considered best practice. Then, moving to the 5th capability, which you see in the top left corner, is the people aspect in big data. If you want to ensure that you achieve value long-term in data, you need to invest in your staff, you need to establish training programs, you need to make sure that you have the right organizational structure to establish all of this. And then last but not least, the topic that everyone is talking about these days is the outer ring of artificial intelligence. It's actually quite funny that because when I developed this enterprise big data framework in 2018, AI was not at the hype level it is today. But if you look very closely, there's a reason why it is depicted at two concentric circles around it. Because AI builds on massive data sets. And without the underlying structure, the predictions and models that are trained by AI will lead towards the wrong kinds of predictions and outputs. So this last capability builds on top of everything else and is therefore the final capabilities that organizations need to master in order to become more data-driven. So now that you have a little bit more of a focused overview of the 6 core capabilities of the framework, it's important to note that that's not all of it. That would be too high level. Each of the 6 capabilities can be broken down into a number of micro capabilities. And in the entire publication and in the book, I cover 30 different capabilities, each which will build upon more details of what is required in order to move your organization further. So for instance, let's start with the first one. If we think a little bit deeper around how do you establish a data strategy, you need to think about the way that you formulate it, but also how do you keep track of innovations, what kind of leadership and governance structure do you need to put in place, how will you establish your communication plans and communication strategy, how do you deal with doing that in a sustainable way? And ultimately, what is your return on investment and how are you going to fund this program? So this is just a very simple example of the big data strategy capability that is at the center. But each of the 6 different capabilities can be broken down into more detail. And the way that I've structured it in the book and in the framework itself is that each of those 30 micro capabilities is subdivided in maturity levels, and there is questionnaires for each of those capabilities included in the publication. And with this, things become very measurable very quickly. You can exactly see where you are today versus what are the steps that you would need to take in order to move your capability towards a higher maturity level. And that is exactly the whole purpose and the whole point of the Enterprise Big Data Framework. I wanted to create something that is easy to use and can be applied across organizations, large and small, national or international, and in whatever industries they are operating. And as such, every organization can use this specific tool and start measuring their own capabilities. Now, some organizations might need all of them. Some organizations might choose to focus on a subset, and that's perfectly okay. What I've just tried to do with this framework is establish a ground level so that every organization can measure and answer the question, which capabilities do I need and can I build to become more data-driven? And that is the reason why it has established in a framework. I personally like frameworks because they provide structure and you can customize frameworks in any way you see fit in different types of organizations. What I noted very early is that there's frameworks for a lot of different other industries, for instance, for architecture, for service management, for project management. But when we looked at data science and data governance specifically, we did not find a specific framework that addresses this. And by using a framework, you can establish a generic blueprint that every organization can use and then start to customize it based on the requirements of their organization. So I'm hoping that with these 6 capabilities that you see on the screen, you very quickly see how you can use this in order to establish measurable improvement in any of these 6 different areas. And because frameworks provide structure, and because they cover all of the organizational aspects, they can be applied by anyone. So I'm hoping that this video inspires you to start reading about it, thinking about it, and looking at which capabilities your organization can address in order to move things forward. Besides that, one of the other key elements that I like about frameworks is that they are vendor independent. It doesn't matter whether your data is hosted in the cloud, on-premise, whether you're using AWS, Microsoft, or the Google stack. It provides a common approach regardless of the underlying technology. And as such, it provides a common reference model so that everyone in the organization literally speaks the same language. And because it is measurable, it allows you to make those improvements on a step-by-step basis. So with that, I hope I've given you an overview of what the Enterprise Big Data Framework is in just 10 minutes. And I'm hoping that with this very quick explanation, you have learned a little bit more today. Thank you very much for watching.